Hello friends, welcome back to my YouTube channel ITLearning LAB. This is JK, and today in this tutorial I am going to show you how we can install and configure the vSphere vCenter server for hypervisor to use in Citrix Xendesktop 7.9, which we are going to install in next tutorial. So here I am using version vSphere vCenter server 6.0 because I need a hypervisor server to configure in Citrix Xendesktop 7.9. You can use Hyper-V and Citrix Gen server for the hypervisor also, but here I'm going to use vCenter server as a hypervisor. So friends, for installing and configuring vSphere client, the minimum requirement we need is 2 core CPU and 8 GB of RAM, and the minimum OS we need Windows 2K8 with R2, and the SQL database and the SQL Native Client for creating the DSM file. I have already provided the system requirement link in the description below. So friends, let's start. So for that I will access my vCenter server. Here I will type mstsc. I will go to run and will type mstsc, and I will type the server name here, vCenter01, vCenter01. That is my vCenter server name. Click on enter. I will use my domain credential to log in on this server. My domain user ID is server, and I will type the password here, and this is the password. Okay. So friends, this is my vCenter server 01 on which I am going to install and configure the vCenter server vSphere server 6.0, because the DSN file is the data source name where we mention the database name, the database credential, and the database server name, so that the vSphere server can connect to that database server to configure its configuration. We need SQL Native Client 64-bit for creating a DSN file. We need to install SQL Native Client 64-bit for creating DSN file. So let me show you how the DSN files look like before we install SQL Native Client. So I will open the ODBC data source name 64-bit here, right? And I will click on System DSN, and then I will click on Add. So once you click on Add, you can see only one SQL driver name here, right, from which you need to create a DSN file. So friends, this SQL driver name is not correct for configuring the DSN file for the vSphere server. We need here the different SQL server driver name which we can get after we install the SQL Native Client 64-bit. So this is the first difference you can see here. This is the screen, this is the window before installing the SQL Native Client, right? And I will show you the ODBC data source name window again, so that you can differentiate the difference after installing the SQL Native Client on this server. And friends, I also need to create database on the SQL server. For the database server, I'm using here SQL server. So I will connect my SQL server here. I will go to run again and I will type mstsc. I will connect my SQL server here. My SQL server name is LIC server 01, and I will log in here with server, my domain credential name server, and the password. Okay, this is my SQL server. The name is LIC server 01. In my test lab environment, I always use a systematic way to configure every services. Either it's related to Citrix Xendesktop, or it's related with Windows Server, or it's related with vSphere server. So for configuring and creating the SQL database, I am going to create a new user account on Active Directory, which I will be used as a service account for configuring the vSphere DSN file, and I will use that as a service account name. So for that I will open the dsa.msc, that is Active Directory tool, and in the users OU I will right click and I will select a new, and then I will select user. Okay, I will give this vCenter, and the user logon name I will give vCenters, right? And I will click on next. I will give the password here. I will uncheck this box because I'm not going to ask the user to change password at next logon. I will select this option and will select this one also, and will click on next and then finish. So I have created the vCenter account for configuring the DSN file for the vSphere server 6.0, and I will add this account into the SQL server database name so that this account can have the full access on the SQL server database, right? So I will open the SQL Server Management Studio here. All right, so for creating SQL database, what I need to do is I need to click on Start menu, and then here type studio studio, and you will see SQL Server Management Studio. So you need to open this application. It will take some time. So you can see that this SQL Server Management Studio has been opened. So this is server type database engine, and the server name is license LIC server 01. This is actually a SQL server's name here, and I'm using Windows authentication here because during the installation, as you can see in my part 1, during the installation I have selected mixed mode for Windows authentication also, and this server SQL server authentication also. So if I select the SQL server authentication here, I need to provide the SA account as a user ID and its password, right? So I'm not using the SQL server authentication here because I already have the full admin access on my Windows authentication username, that is on server ID. So I will select Windows authentication and then click on connect, and now you can see that the SQL server has been connected. I need to expand the database. Let me expand this a little bit. Okay, so I need to expand the database. All right, and from the database, right click on the database and then select new database. All right, so first of all, I need to expand this. I need to click on this plus icon to expand the window, and then select security and then click on plus icon to expand it. Again select logins to expand it, and then here you need to specify the user account which you have created in the Active Directory, and you need to give the full access to this SQL server. So right click on login and then select new login, and from here select search. So the user account which I have created is to belong to an Active Directory, so I need to click on the location here and need to select the jklab.test. I mean my Active Directory here, so select the jklab.test and click on OK. And here type the username vCenter, vCenter. So I have typed the username, click on check names, and you can see that we have the user with this name. So click on OK, right? And in the server roles, click on sysadmin. We need to give the sysadmin access to this account so that it can have the full access on the SQL and the database to configure the vSphere configuration. So, and then click on OK, right? So we have already added the user account in the security and given the full access to on the SQL server database on the SQL server. Now we need to create the database for vSphere server. So I need to select the database and then right click on the database and then select new database, and here give the database name. Like I'm creating this database for the vSphere server, so I will give like vcdb, right? vCenter database, right? I will select the owner as the account which I have created earlier. From the owners box, select the 3 dots to browse the account here which we have added in the security in previous steps, and then from here click on browse and you will get a list of the user accounts which are added in the security. So select the vCenter account here and then click on OK, and then again click on OK and then click on OK again to close this window and to create this database. So friends, as you can see that the vcdb database has been created here. So we are done with creating the SQL database for our vSphere server. Now the next step is to configure the DSN file for the vSphere server installation. So I will go to my vCenter server window. So as I told you that we need to install the SQL Native Client 64-bit here. So I will browse my network location here to find out the SQL Native Client exe. You can also download it from the Microsoft. You can Google it and it will give you the Microsoft link. So I will browse my network location. I will type here 192.168.1.1 is my network share location where I have put my all the needed software. So this is my native client tool which I need to install for creating a DSN file. So I will right click on it, then install and then run. Click on next, accept the terms and license agreement here and then click on next, and then leave all default and then click on next, and then again click on next and then click on install. Okay, so friends, you can see that the SQL Native Client has been installed on this machine. Now we need to create a DSN file so that we can configure and install the vCenter server hypervisor. So we need to click on finish here, and let me show you the ODBC connection, how it looks like after installing the SQL Native Client. Let me go to start menu and then ODBC. From here click on ODBC data source 64-bit and click on DSN file, system DSN, and then click on add, right? And here you can see that we can see two drivers here for creating DSN file. One is SQL Server, which was showing as well earlier before installing the SQL Native Client, and one new driver also we can see, SQL Native Client 10.0, and which is showing now after installing the SQL Native Client. So this is the difference. Actually I want to show you that why we need to install SQL Native Client to create a DSN file. So friends, I will also show you the difference of creating the DSN file with both the drivers, that why I'm asking you to install the SQL Native Client before we create a DSN file. So what I will do, I will create DSN file from both these drivers, and I will show you that which DSN file will show there while installing the vmware vsphere 6.0. So we will click on cancel here and then again cancel it. Let me open my SQL database server. Sorry, it's wrong name, LIC server 01. Here I will click on SQL Management Studio to open it, and I will click on connect, and here I will create a temporary database to create a new DSN file from the old SQL driver version. So I will give here, I will give you temp db or temp vcdb, right? I will delete it later. This is just I'm creating to show you that why we need to install SQL Native Client. Okay, owner, set the owner here like the user account name which we have created earlier. Select the vCenter user account name, then click on OK, and again OK, and then click on OK to create the database. So the temp vcdb has been created, and this is our the main database vcdb which we will use for configuring the vCenter vSphere server, right? So minimize it, go back to your vCenter server, and from here launch the ODBC 64-bit again, right? Create a system DSN file, click on add, right? Select SQL Server first, the old one, click on it and then click on finish. Give the name here, so here give name like temp db for vCenter, right? And here give temp db, and then select the server from the drop down menu. My SQL server name is LIC server 01, right? And then click on next, right? And here it will ask you whether you want to connect this SQL server with the Windows NT authentication or with SQL Server authentication. So if you select here, you will be asked for giving the SQL user ID and password, and if you select here, it will pick up automatically the login ID from which you already logged in on this vCenter server. So I will select with authentication, Windows authentication, NT authentication, and will click on next. And here I will select the change the default database to the temp VCDBs, and then click on next. And here just leave all the settings default selected, and then click on finish. So this is your ODBC data source showing a detail page that what is your source descriptions, what is your server name, what is your database name you have selected, and etc, etc. So you just need to test data source. Click on test data source. So as a test result, you can see that your test is completed successfully. So this means that the DSN file is able to communicate with SQL server and able to create the DSN file. So click on next, click on OK again, and you can see that the DSN file has been created, right? And now we are going to create another DSN file, which will be our main DSN file. So for creating another DSN file, click on add again, and this time select SQL Server Native Client 10.0, and then click on finish. Here give name db vCenter server db, vCenter server db. In the description, database for vCenter server, and then select SQL Server from the drop down menu. Select the server name, then click on next, and again the same option you will see Windows Integrated Authentication or SQL Server. I will select Windows Integrated Authentication, so select it and then click on next. Okay, again I will change the default database here to VCDB, because this is my main main database which I am going to use while installing and configuring the vSphere server. So click this VCDB and then click on next, and here leave all the settings select as by default, do not change anything here, and then click on finish and click on test data source to test the connectivities. So as a test result, you can see that the test completed successfully. So the SQL server is able to create this DSN file with the selected database name. So click on OK and then click on OK again, and you can see that another DSN file has been created. So we can click on OK here, and now we will go to install and configure the vCenter server. So for installing and configuring the vSphere server, you need to map your installation media to your vCenter server. You can download it from the vSphere website. It is available for 60 days trial period. So I have already downloaded this file, this ISO file of vSphere server. So I will open my computer here, and you can see that I already mapped my vSphere installer media to this server. So I will right click on it and then click on open, and from here click on auto run. We will click on install. So this is preparing to install, so it will launch another window to install it further. So this is the next window, so we need to click next here, and then click on accept terms and license agreement, then click on next. So here you will see two options here, that one is embedded deployment and second one is external deployment. So the embedded deployment is that if you are creating a small environment, a small installation, then you need to select the embedded deployment, and embedded deployment will install every roles and features on a single server. But if you are installing and configuring a large environment or a large installation, then you need to select the external deployments, where you need to select and install the separate roles and separate components to the separate server. So here this is my test lab, and I'm using just 2 or 3 servers. So I will select embedded deployment here, and then we'll click on next. So once I click on next, I will it will give me the system name as a vCenter server 01.jklab.test. So this is my fully qualified server name, domain name here. So I will click on next here, and here it will ask you for vCenter single sign-on configuration. So this is my new vSphere server, so I will select create a new vCenter single sign-on domain, and I will give the single sign-on password here. So please keep in mind that you should remember this password to log in on the vSphere server with administrator user to configure the domain authentication and to configure some of the configuration, right? So give the password here for single sign-on. I will give the password here, okay, and then click on next. So here either you can select use Windows local system account for vCenter services to start the vCenter server services, or you can specify a user account here. So friends, I will select the use Windows local system authentication system account here, and if you select this account here, you will see a note here that if you select this option, you cannot connect to an external database using integrated Windows authentication. So this is something you have created a DSN file using this method, using this Windows integrated authentication. So please make sure that while creating a DSN file, you choose to SQL authentication method if you are going to select this option while installing the vSphere server, or if you select this option, specify a user service account. Let me show you that what this will say. I will provide my service account here, right, and then password. So it will give you the error message like the vCenter server service username specified does not have the logon as a service privilege. So if we are providing any different service account here, then we need to add that account into log on as service privilege. So this is something we can do from the group policies. So I'm not going to use different service account here. I will select use Windows local system account, and I have already changed my DSN file to configure as a SQL service account. So I will select use Windows local system account here, and then we'll click on next, right? So here you can see two options, like one is for use an embedded database v Postgres, or the second one is use an external database. So I'm using my external SQL database here. So I will select this option, and from the drop down menu I will select the DSN file name. So when you click on the drop down menu, you will see only one DSN file name, right? And while we have created two DSN file name, one file name we created using the old native driver, and the another file name we created with new native driver. So this is the actually difference which I was looking to show you, that why we need to install the SQL Native Client before we go to create a DSN file for vSphere server. Alright friends, so I will select vCenter server DB database DSN file name here. So once you select this file, you need to provide the SQL user account name here. So I will give the SQL server name here, SQL server account name here. I have created the account name with vc user, right, and then provide the password here, and then after that click on next. So this Windows is for configuring the ports, so make sure that you have opened the mentioned port on the network. So click on next here. On the next screen you will see the destination directory in which this vCenter server will be installed. So we need to click on next here, and we need to uncheck this window because we are not going to join any VMware customer experience improvement program, because this is just my testing lab. So I do not need to select this option, and then click on next. On the next screen you can see detailed summary, where you can verify that all the details you have provided are correct or wrong, so that you can make any changes if you want by clicking on back. I have provided all the details correctly here, so I will click on install, and the installation will start. So we need to wait till the installation get finished. It will take couple of minutes to get it finished. So friends, the vSphere server has been installed now, and we can see that the setup completed windows appear here. So we can click on finish here, and we can close this window now. We will check that whether the vCenter services running or not on this server. So we will open the services.msc here. So as we can see that vCenter services are running here. So we are done with the vSphere installation. Now we will connect this vCenter server via VI client, which is a vSphere client. I have already installed that client on my machine. I will open VMware vSphere client. Either we can type here the server name, or we can use the IP address. So friends, thank you for watching this video. Please comment, like, share, and press the bell icon so that you can get a notification for the another videos which I am going to upload in couple of days. Thank you friends. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day.